This week on the awareness angle, DeepSeek bans, employees smuggling in AI, abandoned games. Brian asks us about policy engagement. We talk about firing phished people, and we look at CybSafe's 2025 predictions report. All of that and more on this week's The Awareness Angle. Welcome to The Awareness Angle, simplifying cyber security awareness. This is a podcast that brings you all of the latest cybersecurity news from the past week and gives you the cyber security awareness angle on it. Joining me this week is, of course, Luke. As always, how you doing, Luke?
Yeah, good, thanks. You?
I'm good. And just lastly, all views and opinions expressed by Luke and myself in this podcast are our own and do not reflect those of our employers. Not that we're talking about anything majorly controversial, but just cover our backsides.
Maybe not in this one, but
one day.
Who knows?
Yes. So thanks for coming back and listening to us again. Don't forget you can catch us on podcast platforms and YouTube if you want to watch us. And if you don't want to watch us, listen to us on podcast platforms. And like, subscribe and all the rest. But let's get into it, okay? So this week, we're going to talk about the news. And Luke, you've got the first one for us this week.
Yeah, so another DeepSeek story, which won't be the last for sure.
Probably not.
So this one, Australia has, the Australian government has banned the use of DeepSeek on their government devices over security risks that they, obviously they're not happy with that platform. It won't be the first.
No, they're not the only. Taiwan have done it now, and South Korea have done it as well. So if you don't know what DeepSeek is, we talked about it in the last episode. DeepSeek is the Chinese backed, Chinese created AI solution that is now in competition with ChatGPT and all the other AI platforms. DeepSeek, made for less, runs on less. Some say is better, but obviously all your data is stored on servers in China, and that makes some people a little uncomfortable. There's no judgment here, though. One of our comments, I'm going to spoil it now, but one of the comments from the comments section later says on a short we posted, because we do shorts on TikTok and YouTube as well, said that I would rather my data lived in China than in the US at the moment. So
yeah, there's a lot.
Yeah, let's not get into that. No. We won't talk about that on this podcast. We're going to see more of this, aren't we?
So they obviously, they've said it's not because of the Chinese origins, but it's because it's an unacceptable risk of their data. But we all know that deep down, that's probably not true. But
probably not. It's funny. We used to talk about the Great Firewall of China, like Google services are restricted in China and other services are restricted in China, and there's great censorship on the internet. And now we're seeing that in other places, aren't we? It's not the free internet anymore. And there is an element of people wanting to protect their intellectual property and their secrets by not letting people share it with these unknown entities. But there's plenty of unknown entities out there that people are sharing data with. And it's whack-a-mole, isn't it, really?
It's just one tool.
Yeah.
Obviously in the past, Huawei, in this news story, even says about how Huawei's obviously been blocked in certain countries, and TikTok obviously as well at one point.
Yeah.
And there's obviously governments around the world that have blocked the use of TikTok. And
Hikvision was another one, and TP-Link. There was talks in the American government to ban TP-Link network attached devices. And I look around, I've got a TP-Link router and I've got some TP-Link smart plugs in house. It's like, Yeah. Where does it end? That's the question. So that's this week's DeepSeek update. Join us next week for another exciting DeepSeek update, no doubt.
Yeah, no doubt.
There was some DeepSeek was in the news for a couple of other things this week, and it's kind of what we alluded to last week. The AI tool was impersonated. So there was fake DeepSeek repositories out there that contained malware. I mean, we said that was likely to happen last week, didn't we? And it happened on PyPI. And there's been phishing campaigns and malware campaigns.
That's definitely one for people to be targeting for sure. Obviously, the amount of use it's seeing, it's a no-brainer for cyber criminals to do it.
It's one of those things, isn't it? The minute something is big in the news, people are curious and people are going to go looking for it, and then there'll be scams of it. You can always guarantee that that's the case. Yeah. So we'll put details of all of the DeepSeek news and a couple of the vulnerabilities and stuff that have been disclosed this week in our newsletter. If you want to get our newsletter, you can subscribe at riskycreative.com, or you can find myself on LinkedIn, and it's on there. The newsletter is available on LinkedIn or via email, and it comes out every Monday along with every episode. Okay. I had a news article this week. Meta, who own WhatsApp, confirmed that there was a WhatsApp spyware attack going on that had targeted 90 journalists and activists. And it involved the use of spyware from an Israeli company known as Paragon Solutions. And the attack was neutralized in December 2024. WhatsApp have reached out to Meta, have reached out to affected users and said that it had high confidence that users were targeted and possibly compromised. They don't know who was behind the attack, but it's meant to be zero click, which means no user interaction is required. They just send it and it's boom. It's done.
Received.
Yeah. The company noted targets were spread over 24 countries, including several in Europe. So if someone's been impacted, they should have been informed by now. But it just goes to show that, I honestly don't know what the awareness angle on this is, right? Because it's zero click. Stop using WhatsApp. No one's going to stop using WhatsApp now. It's kind of, it might as well come pre-installed on every device. Most people use WhatsApp.
Yeah, I noticed this is about how users were added to a group chat on WhatsApp, which I don't know if you can turn off that ability or not, but that might be something to do. But I know I've been invited to random groups, like crypto clubs and all this rubbish, and then you can't really leave it seems, or you have to archive it. It's a bit of a weird system.
Yeah, I've been invited to chats like that before, which is weird. I'm just going to see if I can find any while I'm on here, but I don't think I have. I've probably deleted them. Yeah, I'll tell you the other thing that could be a bit of a risk with this, which I remember I bought something on Amazon, and it was, I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was a cheap piece of electronic equipment that probably originated in China or somewhere in the Far East. And inside, hang on. Okay, I have this might be the one. I'm not sure. So I got this card, and if you're watching on YouTube, I'm holding up like a plastic looking credit card. And it says warranty on one side. And on the other side, it says, thank you for purchasing from our store. Any issues, contact us, and we will do our utmost to solve them. Right. It doesn't say them. But then it has a QR code, and I'm just seeing if the web address works, because I'm pretty sure I tried it. So yeah, this has a QR code, and it has a really dodgy looking website on it that literally asks you for an email address, a username, an order number, and a problem description. I've seen others where join our beta program, scan here, and they're taking you to destinations of untrusted origin, and they're going to ask you for personal details. And it's just one of those, be really, really careful where you're putting your information and where you're clicking. And sometimes, with a zero-click attack, there's not really much you can do. But if you get added to, just don't interact with them. It's like that one we said a couple of weeks ago with the iMessage one, where the links in iMessages are null, that you can't, they're not active if a new contact sends you links until you've responded. And then they say the same old thing. If you don't know the person sending you the message, or you don't know the group, or you don't know where they're from, just ignore it. Just stay away.
Yeah. It's a good reminder.
Yeah. Right. I saw an interesting news article on the BBC News website this week, and it was titled "Why Employees Smuggle AI into Work." And this, like, we've spoken about this before, but the opening lines of this, it's easier to get forgiveness than permission, says John, a software engineer at a financial services tech company. Just get on with it, and if you get in trouble later, then clear it up. Like, that's a cultural problem. That screams bad security culture. And this is true. We've said this before. If the process to get new stuff on board doesn't match someone's intrigue and, ability to want to play with stuff, then they'll just backdoor it. And half the time they won't get in trouble. So according to a survey by Software AG, half of all knowledge workers use personal AI tools. And that knowledge worker, those who primarily work at a desk or computer.
Yeah.
For some, it's because their IT team doesn't offer AI tools, and others said they wanted their own choice of tools. So,
yeah, a lot of times people are, they can't conform to certain tools, so they'll go and use something else that they're used to, I guess.
So this software engineer says his company provides GitHub Copilot, but he prefers Cursor. So it's largely a glorified autocomplete, but it's very good. It completes 15 lines at a time, and then you look over it and say, yes, that's what I would have typed. Frees you up, feels more fluent. Yeah, so, and DeepSeek's only going to expand this, right? If you don't have agile processes in place to approve this stuff, or there's no consequences for not using the approved stuff, then people are just going to go rogue.
And and like we said earlier, there's going to be a new AI tool out in the next month or something, and they'll just be going around in the circles fighting, to stop the use of the next tool, really.
Yeah.
And there's, in that news story as well, mentions about how AI tools are banned, but this person uses ChatGPT through a different search engine that has ChatGPT built into it or powered by ChatGPT. So there's always ways around it.
Always ways. I'm sure, I'm not going to find it now, but I'm sure there was like a browser within a browser, like a website you could go to, and then you could browse within that website and get the same results or something. It's
right. Yeah.
There's always ways around it.
I guess it's just a good thing to explain to people the risks of it, really.
I think sometimes you've got to give up trying to control them, and you really need to get them to understand the harm and the damage. Tell a really good story about, look, here's what can happen. Like, you could build the most amazing thing, and then we can't patent it, or we can't protect our IP in court and then the company makes no money because we've made it and our competitors can now make it because we can't protect it because you've shared our data externally and it's been pilfered by someone else. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. I remember when ChatGPT came out, that was like one of the arguments we used, and I don't think it was one of the arguments that many people had thought of. Like the big things like, data breach, you put it in there and then it could end up in someone else's response when someone else halfway across the world asks a question. And yes, that's a risk. Like, our data is being used to train their models, but there is also the opportunity that, someone, it gets out, or the code you're creating with this is the same as someone else's.
Yeah.
Yes.
Never-ending battle of AI.
Got to have good controls and open conversations and really explain to them why we can't do this. Yeah. I had one more news story this week. There's a funny little meme video that I saw on LinkedIn, ChatGPT versus DeepSeek. I'm not going to show that on here. If you want to watch that, then I'll put it in the newsletter. But the last news story I had this week was, I thought, an interesting one. Valve, the gaming company, the maker of Steam and the Steam Deck, they have put a new warning in place about abandoned games. And I think this is really, really good. I think it's not something they had to do, but I think this is really good. So quite often, Steam is a gaming distribution platform owned by Valve. So people can go to Steam and they can download their games, buy games and run them through Steam. It's like a shop window for games, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
And early access games are something that can be available, so developers can put a game that is not complete out. And a lot of indie games come this way as well. They can use to try and get hype and get funding and stuff like that. And it gives the community an opportunity to provide feedback, and they get to test it across users with numerous different setups and stuff. But there's a lot of early access games and a lot of indie games that then kind of don't get the support, and they kind of go dormant and they don't get updated. So many kind of end up never coming out of early access. And now what Steam is doing is it's going to put a warning on games that haven't been updated in some time. So it's an important warning on pages of early access games that appear to be abandoned or at the very least neglected. So this gets triggered when a game hasn't received a meaningful development update in 12 months. And the warning is displayed under the early access game banner and says the last update made by developers was over 13 months ago. The information and timeline described by the developers may no longer be up to date. I think this is really, really good that they're acknowledging that, this isn't current. This may not be supported.
Yeah.
Let's not forget, like, games can carry vulnerabilities as well. We saw that again, mentioned it a while ago. I think it was an add-on for BeamNG, or BeamNG was a game that got compromised, and that led to a user's session cookies getting stolen, which led to a cyber criminal getting access to someone's Slack, and that Slack was a Disney employees, and Disney's secrets ended up getting leaked, and then Disney ended up getting rid of Slack. And
it's like one of those, I don't know what you call it, like something happens and it just has a knock-on effect. It's like, it's like a chain reaction, isn't it? One thing after another, or it's like a Russian doll of like oh no, there's another one, and there's another one, or like the never Scooby-Doo with masks. So it's the warning. It says here the warning serves as a valuable addition to the Steam store. It's a way to encourage caution before buying a early access title, or I think the security angle on it. If that game hasn't received any updates in a year, meaningful updates, then there might be security patches, security vulnerabilities in it. It's not unheard of as well that old games don't end up. I can't think of one off the top of my head, but sometimes a game that could be in this state might end up going viral, and then you've got lots of vulnerable users, younger users, or less savvy users seeing their favorite YouTubers playing it and then jumping on. Like games like I don't know any recent ones, but games like Bendy and the Ink Machine and Baldy's Basics and Poppy's Playtime and stuff like that. These are bigger games now, but there's other games like that kind of start trending, and if they're out of support, you need to be careful because they could easily get targeted. Maybe think as well, like, slightly off topic, but in terms of, I guess, there's being sort of transparent about when something was last updated or when it was written or something. But maybe if you've got like documentation in the business and just the whole thing about making sure it's all up to date and reviewing it, I guess, and you might be putting out information to say a developer can do this or should do this, but it's not actually up to date and it's a vulnerable way of doing something, or who knows, but maybe just a reminder about that sort of thing. That
actually brings us nicely onto our next topic. So that was very nicely queued up, Luke.
It's obviously on purpose.
Obviously. So the next section is awareness. And for the last 2 weeks, Brian Miller asked us a bunch of questions like 4 or 5 weeks ago, and we've been answering a question a week. So this week's question is around employee engagement, but specifically why employees often feel disconnected from security policies and how to gain their buy-in. So that's kind of tied into what you've said. Security policies as far as user engagement is concerned. Yeah.
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 And for everybody that works in the awareness knows the pain of that.
Probably. Yeah. It's a tough one, right? Because quite often, so I've seen different approaches to this over the years. I've seen security policies written that are aspirational, and they are positioning a kind of utopian existence, and they're trying to use that policy as a method of change. So, it says here in the policy that you must do this. How can we work with you to make you work in this way? That didn't work. So policies need to reflect where they are. So there needs to be a point of consultation with that. Like, policies should be current. They should reflect the exact working. Maybe policies need to be light. I'm not a policy expert. Maybe this is a conversation we need to have someone, that's an expert in policy. But
yeah,
one thing I have seen years ago, and we've kind of done, but I've not achieved it in the way that I wanted to, was a kind of, I've always called it a reverse policy lookup. And this is essentially the way I saw it. It was like, and I'm sure this isn't a dream state. I'm sure I actually saw this, but I never got a copy of it. It's like a PDF that is searchable. It doesn't have to be a PDF. And AI would really help with this now, actually. But essentially what it is rather than a policy, rather than having to know which policy to go to find out where the action I want to check or the behavior I want to check is, you can essentially search your policy suite, and the right keywords are there. So if I want to know if I can use a USB drive, but policy states flash memory or external media or external storage, if I type in USB drive, it's going to come up. And then it tells me, oh, it looks like you want to use a USB drive. Here's what you can and can't do.
Yeah.
And then it openly, like in an ideal world, then it'll openly give you an opportunity to challenge that action or that request. Like, but I really need to use a USB drive. How do I request an exception, or how can I make this happen? And that's just one example. What would be awesome as well, and I don't know solutions that do this, but if there's a lot of security tooling now is just in time, so it's plugged into the various platforms. So when you try to share a document externally, it might go, you're not allowed to share that document externally. Educate the user why. So tell them where in the policy it states that. And so I think policies need to be accessible, and having someone in an awareness function, maybe, how many awareness functions aren't big enough typically to do this, but having someone with a human background, with a experience in the human behavior and communication would be really beneficial, I think, to do that with policies. Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of something we did at one point, wasn't it? The knowledge base, where you obviously handwrite these questions and answers, and put tags in and stuff. But obviously, it's kind of it worked for the most part. But obviously, then you need to update it manually and all that. So I'm sure there's probably a security tool out there that does this sort of thing. Because if someone knows it, they can throw it our way.
This does sound like a good use for AI, right? Because
you get AI chatbots, don't you? Like recipe bots or support bots.
When we were writing that, we very much had to look at the policy. We had to extract the human behaviors or the human actions from the policy, and then we had to write that, and then we had to think of keywords that would be associated with that. Like I said, USB drive, flash drive, external media, external storage, SD card, because anyone could come and search those. So AI could easily come up with those. What are 10 other ways someone might search for an SD card? And it'll spit those out.
Yeah.
And then we had to find the platform to host that on. So we ended up building because we're a Google house, we ended up building a Google site for it and hacking in a search bar because the search wasn't all that brilliant.
Yeah.
And so it was a real kind of budget and fix it solution, but it worked, right? And the reason it worked, or the reason we did that, was because we couldn't find anything reasonable out there that would do it. So
no, yeah.
Maybe there is, like, if anyone's listening and you know of some kind of reverse policy lookup tool that you use or could work, let us know. I'm sure other people would be interested. It could be a really good thing, for us to spread the word about. So if you have something that makes policies accessible, searchable, and real for users, please let us know. hello@riskycreative.com, or go to riskycreative.com and fill something in on the site.
Yeah.
Thank you for your question, Brian. Brian's final question, the final part of Brian's quadrilogy of questions, will be revealed next week.
Yeah. Exciting.
Yeah. Right. The next part I want to talk to you about today is this week saw the launch of CybSafe's 2025 predictions report. And this is views from the industry. So there's some really good talking points in this. I'm just going to get it up on the screen so we can both see what we're talking about. There we go. So here's the 2025 security awareness predictions from CybSafe. These reports from CybSafe, the graphic design on these is always quite simple, but it's really, really effective. And I remember looking at a report. This isn't the first report I've seen in a similar kind of graphic design. So good marks to CybSafe for keeping it simple and making it accessible. So thank you for that. There's lots in here, talking about the year, talking about working locations, so the data for the people that have responded, and then the comments. And the comments is the real kind of meat and gravy on this for some. Okay. So if we go through, let's just go here, the data. So a mix of backgrounds and expertise, security awareness and training specialists, CISOs, IT directors and analysts, cybersecurity heads, and CybSafe partners. So there's a real kind of mixed bag, but everyone's working in cyber.
Yeah.
1 in 3 are security specialists leading security awareness and training and or human risk management programs. 1 in 5 are managers, and 1 in 6 are IT directors. So that's quite a nice cut of it all. You've got some details of reporting and where people are working. 87.9% of respondents are either fully remote or hybrid. 72.7% are hybrid, down from last year. So working patterns are changing. 1 in 3 organizations report 1 in 3 people tackling security awareness and training. 1 in 8 operate with 10 or more team members, which I find amazing. 1 in 8 have 10 or more team members. 1 in 4 are scraping by with just 1 person. That's, it's a nice shift. And I tell you, that's a nice shift because maybe people are now finally realizing they don't spend all the money on antivirus and EDR and that, and actually they do have to invest in people. If I just, I'll stop sharing this just for a second because I just want to talk through some of the talking points for this. So there's a few talking points. One highlight is that regulation is getting stricter. Breach reporting deadlines are tightening. Compliance is shifting from checkbox exercises to measuring behavior change. Thank the Lord. Like, let's move to actually measuring behavior change. Something that when I started this 10 years ago, and even when you started in awareness like 6 years ago, what were the measurements? It was phishing, and that was pretty much it, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It's now
Everyone's favorite thing.
now with more investment and more technology, we can actually measure behaviors, which is great. Although it's easier for some than others. There's no magic, one size fits all solution on that.
Yeah, I imagine it's quite hard for some businesses to get the right permissions to be able to do that.
Yeah, and different tech stacks as well. Everyone's got different tech stacks.
Yeah, with different devices and platforms.
Yeah. AI-powered phishing and deepfakes are obviously becoming more sophisticated, which is making social engineering harder to detect. But on the flip side of that, AI is now also being used for good and is ingrained in many of the security tools that we use, which is awesome. But it's, both sides are advancing at a similar pace.
Yeah.
People remain the biggest factor in security, which is the key thing with this. Insider threats are evolving, they're changing. Security culture is becoming more personalized, and it highlights that there's a shift between security teams from being enforcers to mentors, adopting a more coaching style approach. And this is where awareness comes in. Like, it's the human side, isn't it? We've long been advocates of that, building up great rapport with your colleagues and team and working with them, not like destroy the ban hammer. It shouldn't be allowed anymore.
Easier way to get their buy-in and engagement and support and stuff. It's a lot more fun for them as well.
Exactly, which means when you want to make changes, you'll be surprised how many people want to help you on this journey as well. Like how many people end up getting excited by security, which is awesome.
Yeah.
Emerging attack trends. So QR code phishing is on the rise, exploiting trust in everyday technology. QR code phishing is just a tricky one because they're convenient and they're everywhere. We've used them. Yeah. Supply chain attacks, though, continue to pose a growing risk. And that's not just, third-party vendors in your network and in your systems. That could be like business email compromise. And, as we all knowingly trust each other and work with each other, it's really, really getting harder to know what's genuine and what's not.
Yeah, especially with AI, voice clones and whatever else. It gets a bit too real sometimes.
The last point I pulled from this was around security awareness training is changing and how organizations are moving away from traditional e-learning and compliance-focused training. And they're moving now to gamification, AI-powered simulations, and more role-based training, which I think we've seen a shift from like one size fits all training to more engaging, kind of Netflix approach in some ways, or the Duolingo approach and stuff like that. People are now realizing that it needs to be more than just some tick boxes.
Yeah, definitely needs to be tailored to different areas, different people, and maybe having different ways to do it. Not everybody likes to sit through an hour-long training course.
No, and I think there was something we've done previously, and we talked about this on some content that we didn't quite get across the line before we stopped working with each other. But it was delivering the same content, but in different platforms. So not platforms, in different ways.
Yeah.
So we were talking about launching a whole new starter suite of content, but we were going to release it in written and video form. And then people could watch it or they could read it. And then we could have taken that step further and done an audio version, and it's because some people will engage better if they're sat watching it. Other people will go, I haven't got time to sit and watch it. So they might read it, or they might Sunday morning over their breakfast cereal, just start reading through it, but they might not want to watch me or you or someone talking about it. So the other thing to consider with this communication as well is not everyone. So obviously with all communication, you need to consider your tone and the language you use. But if you're communicating in English and you're dealing with non-native English speakers, people who for English could be a second or third language, then you need to make sure it's basic enough that everyone can understand it.
Yeah, that's definitely.
Yeah.
I think with a good use of AIs, there's a lot of tools now that can help you localize content or video content even. And I think YouTube even have like a auto dubbing feature now, but I don't think it's available to everybody. But it will dub your videos in different languages.
That's awesome.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah, having that out of the box. I know there's premium solutions available that you can get that from, but having that out of the box is cool. Yeah. So we'll put a link to the CybSafe report in the newsletter, and in the we'll put that on the blog page as well, so you'll be able to get that. You have to kind of give some details over to CybSafe to get it, but they're not nasty people. They're not going to, you're not giving it to Elon Musk, so you're fine. It's worth a read. There's some interesting stuff in there. The insider risk stuff's quite interesting as well, I think. So,
admittedly, I haven't read it, so I'll have to check it out.
No, it'd be interesting. Yeah, have a read. It's interesting. Like, there's. It highlights 2024 insider incidents reached new level with cases like Tesla employee leaking sensitive AI training data, which reminds us that the enemy within isn't always malicious or the enemy. It could be your friends that are just being careless or making a mistake. And that's like, how do we protect against that? That's the question. Yeah. Just a reminder, on the 13th, which is Thursday, 13th of February, you can catch me as guest on a webinar hosted by Layer 8 all around champions. So if you've got a champions network, or you are thinking about having a champions network, or you've thought that a champions network isn't quite the right thing for you, join us, myself and Sarah from Layer 8, on this webinar where we'll break down 6 awesome ways that a champions network can be of a benefit and can really make a difference to your organization. So it takes an hour. It's 3:00 UK time. I'll put the details in the show notes and in the newsletter, and hopefully see you on Thursday afternoon.
Awesome. Sounds like one to look out for.
Champions
for next week.
Yeah. We'll talk about it next week. I mean, champions they're a game changer.
Yeah,
really.
It's priceless, really, isn't it? Like, definitely. Even if it's small, doesn't have to be anything massive. Just having something could be.
For ages, we thought that champions weren't right for us, weren't the right time, we weren't in the right place. I looking back, I think that was a mistake, and I think we acknowledge that now. Like, I wish we'd have done it sooner, because the value you get from it is huge.
No, yeah, I'm sure you'll talk all about it.
Probably,
as much as you can.
Yeah, probably. Yes, join us. Join me Thursday, 13th of Feb, 3:00 UK time, with Layer 8 to talk about champions and why they're awesome. So, details in the show notes or on LinkedIn and in the newsletter. I think that's it for this week. Did you have anything else you wanted to bring up?
No, I don't think so. I think that was it, yeah.
Awesome. Okay. Well, don't forget, you can catch us if you're listening to us, you can watch us on YouTube. If you're watching us, you can listen to us on your favourite podcast platform. The Awareness Angle newsletter comes out every Monday alongside every new episode of The Awareness Angle. And if you want to get the newsletter in your inbox, go to riskycreative.com and you can subscribe there, or find me on LinkedIn. And you can find the newsletter there. We've got around 350 subscribers on the newsletter right now. So it's
growing.
It's growing from strength to strength. And it basically, everything that's in the show, plus a little bit more in a little bit of detail, is there in the newsletter. So have a look and let us know what you think. Cool. Okay. Right. Thank you very much, Luke.
Yeah, thank you.
I will speak to you next week.
Cool, yeah. See you next week.
Bye, everyone.